Hey guys, Dave McCann, Blaine Fowler, the Wise Guys. This is bonus Wise Guys material. The football schedule for the Big 12's come out. We don't want to wait till next Monday's show to dive into it. We got a lot of opinions about it, and we know you do too because social media has been buzzing all morning.
Yeah, since 9 o'clock when they released it. Now, we knew the teams, and we've talked about it on the Wise Guys, and who they'd have at home and who they'd have away. What we were waiting for today is when would the buys come, because we knew there would be 2 buys in the 2024 season, and in what order would they play these teams. And we had our fingers crossed, right? Like Utah, November 30th, right? Well, didn't happen.
When the schedule was released, I went right to the end of it. Yes. I didn't even look to see how we got there, and I went and I saw Houston in Provo on November 30th, and my first thought was, what?
Yeah.
And then I had to go searching, and we'll go over the schedule in detail here, but November 9th up in Salt Lake for Utah, and I thought, well, what a strange day to put that game. It's not early, where you've got the
buzz to start the season.
It's not late, where you have everything riding. It just plopped in there on November 9th. Why do you think they did that?
I just think they didn't take into account, I think they let the computer generate most of it, right? And I think they didn't take into account rivalries, because you look across the league, and it's like none of the rivalry games are last week or first week, really, in the league. And so I think they said, hey, computer, generate something that's fair, and they threw it in there. I do like that we know who these teams are at that point.
Yeah.
Injuries will have played their toll. BYU will have a chance to break a quarterback in, whoever that might be, whether that's Bohannon or whoever it is going to be. They'll have a chance to be settled in on a quarterback, and we'll know who the teams are. So it won't be, oh, well, they played in the first game of the season and they got better. It's at least late enough in the season to make a big deal. The thing I like about the buys is not only where they fall, and you and I talked about this on Wise Guys, be nice to play 5 games, have a bye, and then either play 3 or 4, have another bye. And we like that 5 game and have a bye because they could get a bye on conference weekend. And lo and behold, the computer did it. They have a bye on conference weekend.
That takes away Friday Night Football, which we've grown to love.
Yeah, we do love that.
But in the business of these games and the magnitude of them, I think we'll get over it.
Yeah, and they come back, and I like that the bye comes after 5 weeks. I think BYU could be 4-1, 3-2 at worst coming into that game, and they play after the bye. One of the best teams in the league, in my opinion, with Fafita coming back at quarterback, and that's Arizona after the bye. Then the next bye comes on the 2nd of November, so they get a bye week before the Utah game, and Utah also has a bye week that week. Their byes fall on the same weeks, which allows us to have 2 weeks to talk about this rivalry and for these 2 teams to get ready and get healthy for one another. So I do like that the Utah game comes after a bye for both teams.
The Super Bowl has 2 weeks of build-up.
Right.
This game will have 2 weeks of build-up. And also what we get on November 9th, if we're looking for a positive, that you don't get necessarily on November 30th is better weather.
Right.
And so they could even play that game at night and it's not 20 degrees. And it depends. We could have snow at that point or not. But early November games that we've called a million of, been very pleasant.
Right.
And for this game, for the fans and the tailgaters and Cougar Nation and all that stuff, good weather.
Yeah.
Let's have some good weather.
And you know what? It's okay to have bad weather on the 30th because, as you mentioned, they host Houston.
Yeah.
So here's Houston coming in. One of the other new teams to the league. They had a little bit of a struggle last year.
You got a new coach now?
They have a new coach who they bring in from Tulane, who had a lot of success there. But they're going to come on the road, and keep in mind that football team is made up of mostly kids from the state of Texas and some kids from Florida and the Gulf Coast states.
They don't like it cold.
They're to come to Provo at elevation when it could be snowing and 30 degrees. That's not all bad to play Houston at the end of the season. You and I were talking about this season kind of in segments. And that last segment is not, those last 3 games are not like last year, especially where BYU had to play Oklahoma and Oklahoma State to finish out the year when they were desperate.
They had to beat one of them.
Yeah.
Didn't beat either of them.
It's different. They play Arizona State, who really struggled last year.
In Tempe, where the weather's
Yeah,
nice.
Kenny Dillingham was a brand new coach last year. It was his first year in a rebuild. It's probably a 3-year rebuild.
At least.
And so if you finish with Arizona State on the road, nice to have Arizona State on the road late in the season. You don't want to play Arizona State at Arizona State in September.
No, it's 100 degrees.
Yeah, it's terrible down there that time of year. So that's a good time to go to Arizona. Yeah. And so you finish with Arizona State and Houston. That's way different than finishing with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
And one of the other things, and we'll go right now to the schedule. We'll march you through it since we're together here on social media, and a special Wise Guys. The second thing I looked for after where the Utah game was whether or not the August 31st game was going to be moved to August 30th or 29th to give BYU at least a full week of prep before the Friday night game at SMU. And as of now, it's still on August 31st. So it's Southern Illinois August 31st. Then the next Friday's SMU down in Dallas, and then over to Wyoming. Those are the 3 non-conference games. Those aren't easy games.
I don't love that non-conference schedule,
No.
and we've talked about this, but Tom Homo and BYU said we're going to be committed to these contracts. We're not going to opt out of them, even though we probably could. We'll honor these teams. We'll honor these teams, and so they're going to SMU. That's a great stadium and great environment, but it's not easy to win there, and they're a prolific offensive football team.
Finished in the top 25.
Yeah.
They're not messing around down there. But then BYU is neither. They got a fan fest in Dallas this summer just to drum it up. And whatever ticket isn't bought at SMU, and I imagine the Mustang fans will, they're not like, it's not like going down to Arizona State.
Right.
SMU's engaged. It might be a tough ticket to get, but BYU's got fans all over the Dallas area.
And then a rivalry game, really, from the long past that just goes on and on and on with Wyoming and Laramie. Wyoming's been pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's not an easy place to get to. Those are tough non-conference road games. So you chalk up a win against Southern Illinois at home, and then you go on the road, and you hope to come back. They should come back. They should be physically able to be dominating with these teams. And then you come home and play Kansas State in that 4th game.
Kansas State's sneaky good. I mean, they've been rock solid in the Big 12 the last handful of years, and you don't usually think of them. It's always Oklahoma, Texas, and TCU's been up and down, and Baylor's been good, but Kansas State's been solid. Great to have them in Provo.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that when I think of the most physical teams in the new makeup of the league, because now I'm going to include Utah and Arizona and all that, the teams I think of for physicality are Iowa State, Kansas State, and Utah. Not necessarily in that order, but those 3 teams. Kansas State is always a physical basketball and football team. It's just that's just their culture, right?
We didn't see that last season, which was good.
Right.
But we saw what Iowa State did to BYU here in Provo. That wasn't good.
No, and Iowa State's off the schedule this year,
And
which is
that's
actually good. So Southern Illinois.
And so's West Virginia.
Yeah.
That's also good.
Southern Illinois at home, at SMU, at Wyoming, Kansas State at home in Game 4, and then that 5th straight week of play to open the season is at Baylor, who was 3-9 last year.
I like that opportunity for BYU to go there. They were just there a couple of years ago. There'll be a big BYU showing again, as they saw a couple of years ago. And Baylor's very beatable, unless they do a complete facelift here in this offseason. They're replacing guys on their staff. They're replacing players, and I think BYU. I like that first road game in the Big 12.
Yeah, Jeff Grimes, who was the offensive coordinator formerly of BYU, now at Kansas is the offensive coordinator. So they'll be breaking in a brand new offensive coordinator, a lot of new guys, and they finished 3-9 last year. And so Dave Aranda, I love Dave Aranda, good friends with Kalani, good coach, but they're making a lot of changes, and this has to be a bounce back season for them. But they're not coming in as the defending Big 12 champs like they were a couple years ago, loaded with talent. So that's a good road game early. It's winnable. They're all winnable or losable in the conference. We're finding that out in basketball. That's the same. That's the same in football. But so that's the 5 games before the bye.
I like that game.
I will not be surprised to see BYU be 4-1 or 3-2 coming out of that first 5.
Yeah.
They could lose at SMU. I don't think they will.
But I worry about that one.
Right.
And I also worry about Wyoming. They got a new coach. Right. They're going to have a new quarterback. And so they're not what they were this last year, which was pretty good. But we talk about Super Bowls. This is
a Super Bowl. Kansas State could trip you up with Avery Johnson back. They have an O-line rebuild to be done. They were so good on the offensive line last year. But they got a lot of skilled players back on offense, and they're going to be very good on defense again. So 4-1 to me would be phenomenal. 3-2 I'd be okay with. Anything, if they're 2-3, I'll be really disappointed. Before that first bye. And honestly, I expect 4-1 in those first 5 games.
If Gary Bohannon, we're going to put pressure on him, but we'll put some on him because he's going to be on our Wise Guys show on Monday night. But if Gary is back to his old self, which means healed up, and currently is healed up, they could go 5-0 in that stretch.
This
isn't the gauntlet that we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Right. I feel like this team's defense takes a monster step forward. I will be surprised if they're not in the top 3 in the league in total defense and scoring defense this year, because the things that they were missing, they were pretty good last year defensively, but they were missing a couple things. Some monsters inside on the D line. They picked up in this early signing period and in the transfer portal and early signing period some help up front. And a couple of backers, and there's more to come. It wasn't really a big offensive first signing day, but some offensive players are coming.
Right.
And
that February signing is just around the corner.
Right. So, and we'll keep you posted on all that. But with what they added to defense, and with the announcement that Ben Bywater's coming back to anchor the middle of that defense at linebacker, they're really solid coming back after an unhealthy last year in the secondary. Very deep and very skilled in secondary. I just look at this defense to be lights out. So if BYU finds a quarterback in that, that can be consistent and good, then they have a chance to exceed expectations.
Yeah, and we love when they exceed expectations.
So let's say 4-1 or 3-2 in the first block, and now we go what I think is the toughest 3-game stretch between byes.
This is like the bologna in between the 2 byes, in the 2 slices of bread. Bye on October 5th, bye on November 2nd, and then in between, we mentioned the Wildcats a moment ago. And then Oklahoma State's coming to town.
Yeah, Arizona with Fafita back at quarterback, with Brennan as the coach. I don't think they really drop off. Jed Fish is at Washington now, but he's like, there's going to be a big drop off. There's going to be a mass exodus. Well, a lot of the key players said, no, I'm coming back. So I think Arizona's one of the favorites in the league. They finished one of the hottest teams in the country last year. Then Oklahoma State comes in here, and how about the fact that Ollie Gordon, who would have been a high draft pick, said, I'm coming back. At running back, Alan Bowman, their quarterback, who threw for a bazillion yards last year and is really dynamic at that quarterback spot, throwing the football, that quick release and that quick passing game. He got an extra year.
It's like his 20.
Yeah, I think it seems like he's
like 40 years old.
He makes Spencer Johnson seem like he's a young guy right now on BYU's basketball team, but it's at least the 6th year
and he's
for him.
Good.
And he's really good. And so those are 2 tough games.
But you know what? The fact that BYU went to Stillwater with what they took to Stillwater, and a defense that wasn't healthy, but fought pretty well. They led 24-6 at halftime.
Yeah.
They lead 24-6 at halftime in Provo. They're going to win that game.
This defense this year is going to be better. They're not let an Oklahoma State come back if they jump on them like that. And then they finish up that section in between the 2 byes at Central Florida.
That's a scary game.
I like that Central Florida's at the end of October, because now, again, the 2 hot weather teams, they're not playing in September.
Right.
And this is the end of October. Should be beautiful down in Central Florida at that time of year. They got a lot of folks coming back. They probably had the best inaugural season of the Big 12 of all the new teams. They kind of finished hot. KJ Jefferson transferred in to play some quarterback.
This is the 3rd time we're going to see him.
Yeah, this will be the 3rd time BYU's played him. They've had, the first time not such good luck. The second time they played him really well. So we'll see. But that's not an easy game. So that section right there, that middle section, Arizona at home, Oklahoma State at home, and Central Florida on the road, is a tough one. They could go 1-2 during that time. They could go 2-1 during that time. I would say, because 2 of those games are at home and 1 is on the road, give them the benefit of the doubt and say they go 2-1 in that. That would put them, if best scenario in the first 4 games, at 4-1. Best scenario in the next 3 would put them at 6-2. We go worst scenario and worst scenario. Now we're talking instead of 6-2, we're talking 4-4.
Yeah.
So
I like that those 2 of the 3 are at home. I kind of like the way the whole home slate has laid out in spacing. And again, those bye weeks set us up for the stretch run, which would then be starting on November 9th against Utah in Salt Lake City. Here's the thing about a November 9th game, as opposed to an August 31st game. The lineups that take the field on August 31st are not often the lineups that take the field on November 9th. And that goes for both teams. And Utah's got a big question mark in Cam Rising coming off that major knee construction. How is he going to hold up? And how is Bohannon going to hold up, or Retzlaff going to hold up? We're not even sure which quarterback will take the field on the 9th, but we do know that the 2 fan bases will be ready.
It'll be good. And so Utah, it's an interesting team. They're always going to be physical. They're always going to be really good defensively. But they have some really good players, like Bishop's. Their phenomenal safety is going NFL. Vaki, arguably the best player on the football team.
He's out.
He's gone. He's going to the NFL.
And Ellis, their big downline.
Yeah. And so, to me, the biggest loss, the biggest get back is Cam Rising if he's healthy, right? Because what makes Cam Rising great is he's just a gamer and he runs around, he makes plays. He does what Purdy did for the Niners the other day. He converts third downs by running around. If he's not capable with that reconstructed knee of running around, he's not that imposing as a drop back pro-style quarterback. And so that changes the game. So how is Cam Rising? If he's great, they're a really good team. But the back end of that defense with Vaki and Bishop gone, those are, I don't care who you put in there, there's going to be some drop off. And then Vaki was their whole offense last year.
Yeah, and they're
playing on both sides of the ball.
They're getting some portal guys and stuff.
Right.
But all those chips are over there on Cam Rising
Right.
being able to do it. And that's the gamble. That's
One
the gamble
thing
they're
you can
taking.
count on with you, doesn't matter who graduates, they're going to be good on defense.
Yeah, and they're going to try some trick plays.
Right. And
they're
so,
probably going to work.
So this is a great game, and I'm
But,
okay
hey,
with it on the night.
4 of the last 4 games have been decided by a combined 13 points in
Right.
Salt Lake.
And it doesn't matter how favored one team is.
And it doesn't matter what kind of team BYU's taken up there.
Right.
They've been dogfights, and so this one will be another dogfight. We're happy they're on the schedule.
Yeah.
They're going to be on the schedule every year. We also like that there's 2 weeks of build up to that game because with Game Day and Wise Guys and Sports Nation and all the things that we got going on, we can fill that time.
Yeah, there's plenty to talk about.
We can fill that time.
Plenty to talk about. And then I feel like the last 3 games for BYU were much easier than the stretch run for BYU last year. If BYU finds themselves, let's say they were 4-4, and now they're 5-4 or 4-5, and they've got to win 2 games. That was a gauntlet at the end of the year last year. Now they have Kansas coming into Provo. Now Jalen Daniels is coming back. Very good quarterback, but he was injured a lot of the year. Jeff Grimes is his new OC.
He played against BYU, and then I'm not sure he played again.
Right, but good to get them in Provo. And for anybody who's going to have a tough time, Kansas isn't a team where I'm going, I have a lot of respect for Kansas. They were really good last year, but that's not a team that you go, oh, man.
Right.
Oklahoma's coming to Provo. BYU had Oklahoma on the ropes, right?
Think about that Kansas game. BYU led at halftime.
Right.
They gave up 2 defensive touchdowns.
Yeah, they
lost.
handed the game over.
Take care of the ball. They go on the road and beat that team. So I think they should feel confident with that team coming to Provo.
And then we've already mentioned they wrapped the season up on the 23rd at Arizona State, who's in the second year of a rebuild, and they really struggled this last year, 3-9. They'll be a little more established by the end of the year, but that's a winnable game for BYU on the road. Yeah. And then Houston at home, who's coming off of a 4-8 season last year, and they have a new coach. Willie Fritz is the new coach from Tulane, who did a great job there, but he's going to redo everything. Now it's the end of the year, so they should be who they are. But I think, let's put it this way: playing at Arizona State and having Houston at home at the end of the year is better than playing Oklahoma at home and Oklahoma State on the road to end.
Yes, it is.
So
yes, it is, and the Arizona State game's intriguing because that fan base down there has waited 8 years for this announcement that BYU's actually coming back. It was Kalani's first game in 2016 at the University of Phoenix Stadium against Arizona when BYU won on Jake Oldroyd's field goal. But that place was packed with BYU fans.
Yeah.
If there are 2 valleys outside of Utah Valley that rival Utah Valley and BYU fandom, it's the Las Vegas Valley and the Valley of the Sun.
That's right.
And so the Valley of the Sun is going to get BYU back in town the Saturday before Thanksgiving. I think they're thrilled to death.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. So expectations. The thing is, BYU's got to get to at least 6 wins this year. I see 6 wins. In fact, if they only win 6 this year, I'd be a little disappointed. I see 7 wins on this schedule, and if they and 7, I'd be okay with. But I could also see a possibility of 8 if things go well and a quarterback plays well.
Right.
Perhaps even 9 if the quarterback plays lights out and I really think they're going to be good defensively, and the offense is going to go as the quarterback goes. Isn't that always the case?
Yes.
So if they get outstanding quarterback play, why not 9 games, right? If they get really good quarterback play, why not 8? And if the quarterback's just solid, which I would expect, then I would say at least 7. So 6-6, everybody's thinking just get to a bowl. I would say we're setting sights a little bit too low if we say we're okay with 6-6. I think 7 wins would be a nice second season in the league. 8 wouldn't surprise me. 9 would tell me that they got outstanding quarterback play.
Yeah. And 5-7 last year wasn't the worst start for the first team P5, Big 12 year. But they didn't take care of the football down the stretch, and that's why they didn't go to a bowl game. Those last 4 games that they lost, really the last 5, one with Slovis banged up, and with Jake Retzlaff coming in cold turkey against a gauntlet that included West Virginia, who might be in the upper echelon. I would vote them in the upper echelon this year. But 5-7 last year, having not done what you said is the requirement for this year, and they were 1 play or 2 away from being bowl eligible last
having
year.
6 or 7.
So you fix some of those things, and it shouldn't come down to a game against Houston to get bowl eligible.
Yeah, they weren't in any games last year where like, oh, they just can't compete.
Yeah.
And so that makes a big difference.
Now there were some games they didn't compete. Like Iowa State and West Virginia, but that doesn't mean they couldn't have.
Right, and it's not. But we never said we were like, what are they doing at Iowa State? Why is this guy here? Why is that guy there? Why are they not containing the edge? We never had a game that we watched where we went, man, BYU just physically can't compete with this team. That was never the case. So they'll compete just fine, and if they can take care of the football, that makes a huge difference. Number one, thing to win football games is take care of the football, right? And let's talk about who's not on the schedule. So you mentioned West Virginia's not on the schedule. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing
this year because they're on the rise. Iowa State's not on the.
I like them not on the schedule.
I like Iowa State not on the schedule. They're very good. Texas Tech with their wide open offense and flinging it around. I'd be okay if they had Texas Tech on the schedule, but not on the schedule this year. No TCU. Which is interesting. I expect TCU to have be good again this year.
Yeah, because remember they fell off big time after a hot
I was kind of hoping they'd get Colorado and Dion maybe at home, but we've learned that they weren't a couple of months ago, but Colorado not on the schedule, and then Cincinnati not on the schedule.
Yeah, you can imagine that we're in a league with 16 teams.
Yeah, crazy.
It's insane. And you look at the Big 12 schedule matrix, and it's like 16 teams. One, we haven't been in that since the days of the old WAC. And that was a long, long time ago. But none of those teams are these teams except for BYU and Utah. Maybe TCU is in there. But that's a gauntlet of P5s.
Yeah. And the thing is, the only thing you can count on from year to year, because you're going to play different teams every year, is that BYU and Utah are going to play.
Yeah.
I mean, we can look forward to 2025. We don't know the order, but they'll have home games against TCU, Central Florida, Utah, and West Virginia. So West Virginia's back on. TCU's back on the schedule. They have them at home. They have away games at Arizona, Cincinnati, Colorado, Iowa State, and Texas Tech. So it just kind of rotates in. Yeah. So it's going to be a little bit different than being in a league where you play everybody every year. But the one thing you can count on is they're going to play Utah every year. They're going to honor that.
And what we learned today is that game could be anywhere on the schedule. It's not going to be, at least the indicator now is it's not going to be reserved for Thanksgiving weekend, which we thought was the rightful spot. It's now, it could be the first league game. It could be the middle of November, early November, and they could still put it at the end. Maybe they'll go, hey, you know what? Maybe we should have put that on Thanksgiving.
And one thing we learned in this first season of the Big 12 is there's no weeks off, no matter who you're playing. No. Even the teams that are down have talent. And man, we're learning that in basketball as well, and maybe even more so in basketball. But it also applies in football. And the difference between winning and look at what this basketball team's doing. They're overachieving. Picked to be second to last in the conference, and they're way overachieving. They're taking care of the ball. They're shooting the ball. They're playing with passion. They're playing great defense. Those are
football.
Those are things that the football team can do.
And some of these Big 12 games look like football games with a round ball.
Yeah, and I was looking at the net this morning in basketball. I'm like, oh my gosh, this league. Yeah. Texas moved up 2 spots in the net and lost both games last week.
Yeah.
But they lost to BYU and they lost to Houston, and they moved up 2 spots in the net.
They were so close to beating Houston.
That's how good this league is in basketball, and that all applies to football. There's no days off in this league, and you got to bring it every week, and you got to stay healthy to go on a run. So it's going to be a fun season. There's some great teams coming in to LaVell Edwards Stadium. I like that they play warm teams on the road late in the season and not early. All in all, it sets up pretty well. There's that middle stretch between byes that I think is the toughest 3-game stretch on the schedule. But I like their chances to not only be bowl eligible, but be a couple of games better than bowl eligible this year.
As we look ahead, the first game, of course, is the alumni game, and then the big question mark is: will Max Hall be back?
I think he's recovered from that Achilles and he's ready.
If he's not playing, we want him as a sideline.
He'll come and do it with us.
And then once we get through that, which will be after spring practice wraps up. Then we're into the summer, and the team will report to practice in July because of that August 31st game. And so everything will be sped up a little bit and will seem like it's coming earlier than normal just by playing a game in August as opposed to early September.
Yep, and we'll be tracking football for you because there's always some news. Like you mentioned, the February signing date's coming up,
Yeah.
and there's another transfer portal opening, and we'll cover all of that for you at wiseguys.com, and we'll continue to cover basketball for you as this really great basketball story continues to unfold, and BYU still projected today as a single-digit seed, and they're still in the top 10 in the net, and so
life's good.
What a fun time!
It's like 50 degrees
What
outside.
a fun time to be
Let's do it.
in the Big 12. So
Monday on our next Wise Guys show, Diljit Taylor, track and field coach, is going to be with us. We look forward to her visit, and Gary Bohannon will be in studio. We'll talk about his role coming in to try and win the job and be the starter against Southern Illinois on August 31st. So that's Monday night, 6 Mountain on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and ysguys.com. For Blaine Fowler, I'm Dave McCann. We're the Wise Guys. A special bonus Wise Guys today, where we finally have that 2024 Big 12 football schedule out, and now the countdowns can begin, and we'll start by seeing you on Monday.
yeah, we'll see you Monday.